Hi, so I wanted to show folks in a new video just something we've been working on recently, which is we're fixing up our application action log. I originally called this the event log, but I've been convinced internally to call it an action log. So let's see what you guys think. So the idea of the action log is to show the context on an application. It seems very important to our users that they know the history of what happened on the application, be that a history which is nice and clean and good, or maybe an application history where something has gone awry and so, people need to go back in and audit the situation. So from either perspective, the application action history gives you an excellent perspective on what's been going on in the application. So in this example here, we've got the assessment dashboard, and I'll just recap for people who aren't aware of this. The assessment dashboard is a one-stop shop that you get an email from because you're a part of a workflow for a given course or course group or whatever. You get an email and it brings you into the assessment of the application on the work you have to do. There's no more searching for applications unless you really want to. You get brought to the work you have to do. So over on the left, the new applications are just the work that my user is assigned to. So it's not going to show me all new applications. It's only going to show me the new applications that work I have to do. There's also some recent applications that I worked on as well. I can go searching in all applications, but for the time being, we just want to focus people on the work they have to do. Now, in the other videos I showed the various parts of this. You can see the documents and the various sections. In this case, it was a very simple application form for this person, Angela Olsen. And this part of the workflow is personal assessment, and there'll be some instructions telling what to do on the personal assessment. Incidentally, later on, we're going to be introducing a thing here called checks. Okay, checks are created in the workflow, which we can use for basically the little items of things that must be checked for a given section, section in the workflow, for example. So if it's a personal assessment, the checks might be check the birth cert is valid, check their such and such a form is, they have the correct credentials in it, check their, their results or whatever that might be. And the assessor will have to check those checks, and without checking them, they cannot proceed. Also, mandatory fields are implicit checks, and if you find that a mandatory field has been filled in, but filled in incorrectly, you can mark it as and uncheck it and say, well, this is something that needs to be fixed before we can proceed the application to the next stage in the workflow. That's just a little update on something that's coming down the line very shortly. But for the moment, I want to focus on this application action history. Okay, so for this application history, we can see here that the application was created. We're going to be adding timestamps to these, and when you click on them, they're going to expand. For the moment, we've just kept it simple as we moved on. Assessor then viewed the application. So what this is tracking is when someone got an email and clicked on the link to bring them in to view that application. So they were an assessor that was for this application. Okay, so the assessor viewed an application and then they decided to send a message. So at the bottom here we have a message button. It's not working for this demo at the moment, but it'll be along shortly as well, where you can click on this and we can decide, do we want to send a message to another assessor about this application? Again, we want to keep all messaging centric to applications. So we don't necessarily want messaging that's not attached to an application, because this is the whole idea of this is application assessment. Keep all the work focused on the applications in question. Okay, we'd also be able to send a message to the applicant. In this case, we've sent a message to the applicant. Now you'll notice the indentation here, and it's a bit like text messages on your phone or WhatsApp or whatever, Viber, what people might be familiar with. Okay, so the right indentation means it was an action performed by the applicant. Left indentation means it was an action performed by the system or by the staff or the assessors. Okay, so the application was created by the applicant, right indentated. Left indentation, an assessor viewed an application, then decided to send a message to an applicant. Okay, and this was, please re-upload your birth cert. It's unreadable, maybe. Okay, and at this point then the right indentation showed that a new document was uploaded by the applicant, and then a message was sent back to the assessor saying, hey, I've uploaded my birth cert. And at this point then the application was progressed. Okay, the previous section to this was the international office in this workflow, and then what happened was someone progressed the the application through the workflow. And what we're going to do now is we're going to just show that happening again. So I'm just going to proceed this application. Now, for the purpose of this demonstration, I have this user is able to access all sections of this workflow, which is not normally the case, but it's just useful for the demonstration, in which case I can just refresh this as though they were the next in the next office, if you like. And this part of the workflow is called fill quota, and it had very different instructions, and it'll have different checks and different things to do. But the purpose I wanted to show you here is that another section has been triggered. Okay, so the workflow has progressed through, and now we can see that the context of this application is building up over time. Now, this is the early stages of the application action history. We've filtered it down. If you looked at previous videos, you would have seen a whole lot of information in here. So for the moment, we were just trying to tailor this to what people want to see. So we've filtered it down. We will be showing a lot more in the future, such that the applicant logged in and various things that happened and other internal messaging and stuff. But for the moment, I just wanted to show you what we're working on in that, and maybe it'll raise some interest in that areas and highlight some stuff. So as I said during this video, the next thing that's going to come up is checks. So checks that need to be done at each stage of the workflow, which are applicable for that stage of the workflow. And then also later on, we're going to be doing one of the most important things about workflows, which is attaching a section in the workflow, sort of a stage in the workflow, if you like, to statuses. And statuses are what you would be familiar in the old world as ratings. Okay, so to progress an application through the workflow, we would precede it, and that would update its major rating number in the old world. If people really want to use ratings from the old world, we'll have a way of mapping them, but we want to sort of move away from that concept and move to a much more linear approach, whereby there's only a precede and a revert, so it moves you forward and backwards through what we call statuses. And we can think of those statuses as the major numbers in the workflow, sort of the first half, or the rating numbers, the first half of the rating numbers. Then the things I talked about earlier in this demonstration, now you can see the reason why, which are called the checks, which we're going to place here. Okay, the checks are what we can think of as the minor versions in the old ratings system. Okay, which were things like such and such a document is missing, or there's such and such a problem with the application, and so they would form what were the minor numbers in the ratings. And of course we can assign multiples. One of the problems with the old ratings numbers is the only one rating can be applied, major plus minor number. Okay, now we're breaking that apart into statuses, which get preceded linearly through the workflow, and checks on which you can assign or unassign or validate or unvalidate multiple checks within one section of the workflow. So I'm just going to leave it for that for the time being. Please stay tuned to our demo site, and we'll have more updates shortly.